In this video, I'd like to look at extending the React component class and making an object that's going to have some properties so that we can sort of reuse this template to have slightly various different objects, but of the same overall template. And here's what I'm going to make. This unit down here is a combination of a radio button and a label that work together so the user can click either on the label or on the radio button. And then I'm going to have different sets of radio buttons. So the radio buttons sort of have different values behind the scenes. They have text, which is what we're going to show the user. We need the name of radio buttons to get them to work in different groups. And then I need an ID to get the label and the radio button, the input of the radio type, to work together. So I need all these various properties, and I don't want to have to make a React class and extend a React component class for each individual radio button. I want, one that has properties. Then I can get slightly different radio buttons, but overall, all from the same class. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So I want to be able to reuse the class by having it have some properties. I'm going to work, my properties are going to be, they're going to have different values. I'm not doing anything with the values of these radio buttons, but if I were going to use these radio buttons, the value is the thing I would get out of the radio button, the selected value. The text is what the user sees, so they're going to have different values, different text. The name is what groups them, so I want to be able to have these two groups of sizes and colors and different IDs to get the labels and the radio buttons to work together. I'm going to do this with properties. So I'm going to be showing you how to work with properties of an object of the React component class that you extend. And then there are little things we've got to watch out for, like the for property of HTML. We don't want to confuse it with the for of JavaScript. So we'll instead of saying for, we'll say HTML for, things like that. Okay, so the code for this example is found at this URL if you want to grab it. Here in the head, I've got a title and I've got my CDN. So I'm not working here with a node packet manager or anything. I'm just working with a bunch of CDNs. I'm using React 18 and I'm using Babel 721. I've got some style. I would say not much. I had some list items. I had a body. This is styling the checked radio button. So it's an input of the radio type that's checked, and then have its adjacent sibling, the label, and styling that. And then this is the generic styling of a label, giving it a particular width, giving it an inline blocks display style, and then giving it a width. Okay, so let me collapse that style. Not really that interested in style, we're more interested in React. Here was the page, the header for the page, that little paragraph at the top. Here's all my yada, yada, yada about React. But now let's get to the actual React. So here's the last bit of design on the page, a header and a div, and I'm going to fill that div with React, and another header and another div, and I'm also going to fill that div using React. Okay, so here's my script area, and so there's that. So there's these containers and script. Okay, so The script area is not a simple JavaScript, but it's of the Babel type, because I was bringing in the JSX Babel code from the CDN, my third CDN up here. And so it's not normal JavaScript. It's not even just normal React. It's Babel gives us the ability to, we are using React to make some HTML dynamic components, and Babel allows us to make that HTML look as much as possible like HTML. So I'm making a radio. I called it my radio. I'm extending the React component. I want not just a radio button, but a radio button label combination. And React does not want us to return multiple things. So then I put those multiple things in a div. So that now I'm sending back one thing, a div, and then that div happens to contain two things, an input of the radio type and a label. Here's me with these yellow curly brackets here using the properties. So I'm not specifying here for the input, I'm specifying the type. A radio is a specific attribute I'm interested in my HTML, but other properties of my HTML, I'm relating to the properties. So when I instantiate the object, the React component object called my radio, I'm going to send it some specific properties, and I'm establishing my HTML properties based on those properties that I will send this. So this.props.val. So I'm going to have a val, I'm going to have a group name, I'm going to have an ID, I'm going to have text, I'm going to have these 4 properties when I make a radio button label combination. The value is normally when I work with a radio button, what I sort of want behind the scenes. The user selects a value, and that's what I want. The name is what groups a set of radio buttons. So I had the size and the color radio buttons, so they will be given different group names to break them into these separate groups. And I can, with radio buttons, I can choose one and only one of the from the set. And it's the name that sort of forms the sets. The ID is used in conjunction of a radio button, is being used in conjunction with the 4 of a label to make them work as a pair. That allowed the user to click either on the radio button or the label. 4 is a word in JavaScript, and 4 is a word in HTML. And so we are writing HTML within JavaScript, and so that could get confusing. So instead of 4, we write HTML4 here. And then we're going to use the ID property that we set up when we make one of these things, we're going to establish an ID. And the text is what the user sees between the open label and the close label. So that is our radio class. Again, one overall container, so that I'm only sending one thing, but within that one container, an input of the radio type and a label, and then these 4 properties used that are not specified here in the class, but will be specified when we create an object of the class. So here now I'm referring to the page. I'm setting up a root, and the root is going to specify a sort of basically a place on the page. So I have a container with an ID div size, and I'm establishing that as a ReactDOM.createRoot. And then I'm going to put stuff into that container. So when I want to put, again, with React, when I want to render multiple things, it doesn't like that. But if I group them all in one thing, like a div, then that works. I should also have said that this div up here had a second purpose. One of its effects was just to sort of wrap it up and make it a single unit for me. But another sort of standard styling of a div is that it's on its own line, sort of horizontally. And so this radio button, this label, will be a unit together, and then anything that comes subsequently will be on a new line. So that's what put each one of these on its own line. And if I didn't want them all on their own line, if I wanted them to go across horizontally, maybe I would make that a span. Okay, back down to me here in div 1, putting it on the page. So again, I made the root. Now I'm rendering the root. I'm putting it in a div to make it one thing. And then here are my 4 size radio buttons. So I'm making something in React that is creating like an HTML-like element. And so I'm using an HTML-like notation here, angle bracket. So I'm making a my radio button type element. And here are my properties. Val is the small for this first one, and the group name was size, and the ID was rad size _0, and the text was small. So then that got sent to the class, and those got distributed to the input of the radio type and the corresponding label as defined by the class. And I have the next one has the same group name, so they work as a unit, but a different value and a different text and a different ID. So there's me sort of with my reuse using that radio button class, but sending it different properties. Here's my second part of the page. So I'm establishing another root to make a different root on the page to add some dynamic HTML. And this time I'm adding 3 radio buttons. I want to group them all together so that it's one thing with 3 children. And I'm making 3 radio buttons. I'm giving them all different values. I use sort of the hex code for a color. Give them all the same group name color so that they work as a unit, but different than what was above size. And then give them these different IDs. And the IDs should always be unique. So these IDs need to be different within the group, but also from the other set up here. And then the text is what the user is going to see. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to show you, sort of how to have a React component and how to work with its properties so that you can get variations on your React component. Thanks for your attention.